Good morning, gentlemen. It's a bright sunshine, and I thought it's a wonderful time to talk to my friends. दोस्तों, बहुत से लोगों ने मेरे से पूछा है, कैप्टन, you are silent for many days. Please tell us what's happening in Ukraine. What's happening with Zelensky, Putin, and Donald Trump, and what's going to be the future of the EU? Gentlemen, these are momentous questions. बहुत मुश्किल सवाल हैं, but I will try to answer them. मैं उनका जवाब दूंगा आपको. सबसे पहले, I think you all are aware that from the time of Bill Clinton, the aim was to finish Russia once for all. Finish Russia for the next 100 years. That is why Bill Clinton made that nefarious plan to expand NATO to the borders of Russia. This despite a promise made by him in 92 to Yeltsin that NATO would not expand eastwards. But he did it. Game was simple. He was goaded by Britain, France, and Germany, and the other European powers. They wanted to dominate Europe, and they wanted to finish Russia. Hence, they wanted to incorporate Ukraine into NATO, and that was the reason for the war. It became an existentialist crisis for the Russians, and they were left with no choice. And Donald Trump has echoed that. उन्होंने ये बात मानी है कि रशिया के ऊपर लड़ाई थोपी गई. Now, coming to that war, the Russians had no option. They launched the offensive. And now, I think close to 3 years have gone, and the Ukrainians are on their last legs. Yes, on their last legs. Russia has taken about 35% of Ukrainian territory. They could have done better. By now, they should have knocked out Ukraine. But Ukraine was getting tremendous support from NATO and America, and billions of dollars worth of arms and equipment was being funneled into Ukraine. Ukraine कहाँ हार रहा था because they were not having the manpower, and they were incorporating women as fighters also. So, gentlemen, this was the situation when Donald Trump took power, and he examined the issue, and he came to the conclusion that Ukraine war had been thrust on Russia, and it was futile for the Americans to fight in Russia, in Ukraine. ये एक बहुत ही important point है, because Joe Biden on a visit to Ukraine had said, we will support Ukraine as long as it gets. I mean, it was a very childish remark, but he made that thing, and the Americans continued supporting Ukraine with millions of dollars, and that was as a grant. They're not going to get any dollars back. While the EU was also giving the money, but that were loans. Now, EU के एक predicament है, let me tell you, that is particularly Germany, France, and England. They are spent forces. They have no power in the world. And beyond their own countries, they cannot exert anywhere. You said days of the British Empire and the French Empire are over. Khatam. They are now sitting in their nest. But at the same time, to desire is there always to take over the world and show to the world, look, we are something. And that is why they were writing piggy bank on the horse of Uncle Sam. And Americans, as usual, benevolent to the extreme, and they were giving a lot of money to the EU. I think it's carried on since 1948 when General George Marshall made the famous Marshall Plan to pull Western Europe out of the dumps, and it has continued since that time. But Donald Trump has realized that this is a losing proposition. Who's going to pay for these extravaganza in helping EU to become world power? Is the American taxpayer. Having realized it, he has decided that all wars must be stopped, and he's had a hand in the Gaza ceasefire, and now he's going to get the Ukraine war stopped. And mind you, the British, the French, and the Germans don't want it. They want the war to continue. But they themselves don't have the capacity for the war should continue, and hence they are pressurizing America not to take or have a deal with Russia alone. They're saying incorporate Ukraine also in the deal and incorporate the three French powers, the European powers, that is England, France, and Germany, into the negotiations. Donald Trump has rejected this outright, and to put pressure on Donald Trump, the British Prime Minister is visiting America and so is the French President Macron. They're hoping they'll go to Donald Trump, placate with him, and get the policy reversed. But it's not going to happen, and very soon the EU is going to realize that they are non-entities in the world. That is a fact. And Ukraine, because of its own foolishness and the foolishness of President Zelensky, is going to lose 30% of its territory to Russia. I think a tacit agreement has been agreed to by between Putin and Trump that the war will be stopped, but whatever is with the Russians will remain with the Russians. And the EU is going to be holding their thumbs, and just chewing the crumbs. So, gentlemen, that is the position at the moment in Russia. The first meeting has just taken place between the representatives of America and the representative of Russia in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, and progress has been made. They reached the conclusion that war must end and can end only one way, that is, a ceasefire takes place in the present border which is being occupied by Russia. The British are the worst hit. I mean, their power is zero, and they are thinking of sending their own troops and all to Ukraine. I don't know what sort of troops they can send when the entire army is 80,000 only. And if they're going to send 20,000 and they're wiped out, I don't think Britain has got a backup force. The French President Macron doesn't know which way the wind is blowing when he made the statement that Russia should not be allowed to win. And what's happened to him? He's eating crumbs. And the German Chancellor Scholz has been defeated in the last election by the Conservatives. And he must be wondering what happens to him. And Trump has congratulated the Conservatives on their victory. So, gentlemen, the situation in Europe is, as I told you, the European powers are finished. They know which way to go to, and there will be a ceasefire in Ukraine, and that will be basically benefiting both the Americans and the Russians. The war will be stopped, the billions of dollars being funneled into Ukraine will be stopped, and Russia will have its self-respect back, which is very important. However, there are small ills which are going to need to be ironed out, and I'm sure Trump and Putin will be able to do it. So the crux of the issue is that the Ukraine war is coming to a dead end, and the second important point which we must note is the eclipse of the European powers, that is, in particular, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, who were riding piggyback on the Americans and trying to show to the world we're great powers. We're great powers. Yes, they're great powers, but that was 100 years back, no longer. So, gentlemen, Ukraine is now devastated. And of course, the Americans will help them build Ukraine, but Donald Trump has been incessant in criticism of the Ukrainian president, Zelensky. He's the man, and Donald Trump has said he's a dictator without being elected. And Zelensky doesn't know what to do. He's been trying to gate crash everywhere. He went to Saudi Arabia also. He wanted to go there and gate crash into the meeting with the Russians. He was forbidden to enter there, and he doesn't know what to do. I think Zelensky on his way out. His days are numbered, and I won't be surprised if something else happens to him. So it's the best of thing for him is to go, leave Ukraine, go away, and look for peace. That is what is the need of the hour. You can't keep fighting the Russians. They've tried every damn trick under the bed, and nothing has worked. The Russians have taken substantial amount of territory, and they got plenty of reserves and material still to fight. And though they may have lost thousands of men, the Russians are still on the ascendant, and Ukraine is a country that is finished. So, gentlemen, these are the points we must bear in mind that Donald Trump has achieved the impossible peace in Ukraine, but at the same time, he has eclipsed the powers, or rather clipped the powers of England, Germany, and France. I think these three countries were thinking they are very big tigers, when they were actually lambs. They had no power, and all this bravado talk of Britain sending troops to Ukraine and all that is a lot of bull. It's not going to really anywhere. And there are some other countries who don't want to be involved in the battles. Poland has said we're not going to send any troops there. So has Hungary, and so has the Germans. So it's going to leave the French and the British to fight the battle in Ukraine. I don't think they have the capacity to fight any battle at all without American support. And if the Americans decide, well, we're going to have peace with Ukraine, there's no fighting, there's no choice for Zelensky but to run away from there. It's best for him that he runs away. And we have to see and watch and wait what happens, gentlemen. It's a great feather in the cap of Donald Trump. He stopped the war in Ukraine, and at the same time, he has always said that NATO is an obsolete power, an obsolete organization, an anachronistic which is not relevant with the 21st century. And that will be the end of NATO, and they must gear up for their own defense. I don't think they can even defend themselves. If you remember, in 1940, France lasted just 40 days against Germany in the Battle of France, and Poland and these countries were run over in 3 weeks. So they shouldn't be too cock-a-hoop about their military capability. And in case there's a nuclear war, I'm afraid that will be the disaster, the end of European civilization. So I don't think they're going to touch a nuclear war or press the nuclear button, because there's countries so small which are equal to a few villages in India and China that they just cease to exist on the world map. Countries like Luxembourg, Belgium, Denmark, a couple of nuclear bombs and at the end of them. So we should be very careful not to antagonize the Russian bear. At the same time, they must see reason and go in for a peace deal. That's the only option for them to survive, because they get an aging population, their women are not fertilizing enough, and that is the reason, the Imam of the Al-Aqsa Mosque said, exhorted the young men from the Middle East to go and fertilize the European women. That's a fact. You can watch the video on YouTube. At least it was there a few months back. So, gentlemen, I think Donald Trump is on the ascendant. I've given you an idea of what's happening in Ukraine. Peace will definitely be there, and that will mark the eclipse of the EU. NATO in the long run will cease to exist, and it's going to be ascendancy of America in the world. I close now, gentlemen. I hope you like my video. Share it with your friends. Come back for more. In the meanwhile, I'll say goodbye, God bless, and Jai Hind. Look forward to seeing you again.